The most powerful rule in personal finance is also the least exciting. It doesn't involve timing markets. It doesn't involve picking winners. It doesn't involve picking winners. It doesn't involve optimization, hacks, or clever tricks. And that's exactly why it works. The rule is simple. Spend less than you earn, consistently, automatically, for a long time. That's it. Most people hear this and immediately tune out. It sounds obvious, it sounds basic, it sounds like advice for beginners. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This one boring rule quietly outperforms the majority of smart financial strategies people chase for decades, not because it's brilliant, but because it survives. Let's start with why this rule is so underestimated. Humans are drawn to novelty. We're attracted to complexity. We associate intelligence with sophistication. So when someone tells us the answer is simple, the brain rejects it. If it were that easy, everyone would be wealthy. There must be more to it. I need something more advanced. But wealth doesn't reward novelty. It rewards consistency, and consistency is boring. Now let's talk about what this rule actually does psychologically. Spending less than you earn creates margin. Margin is the most important concept in personal finance. Margin absorbs mistakes. Margin absorbs stress. Margin absorbs bad months. Margin absorbs life. Without margin, every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. With margin, problems become manageable. Most financial stress isn't caused by low income, it's caused by zero margin. Now here's where the rule becomes powerful. When you consistently spend less than you earn, behavior starts to change automatically. You stop needing perfect months. You stop panicking about timing. You stop reacting emotionally to short-term noise. Because margin creates emotional safety, and emotional safety improves decision-making. Now let's talk about automation. This rule only works when it's automatic. If you try to spend less than you earn, fatigue will eventually win. If you remember to save, distraction will intervene. Automation turns intention into behavior. Money that leaves your account before you see it doesn't compete with temptation. Money you never touch doesn't require discipline. This is why the rule beats smart strategies. Smart strategies rely on judgment. This rule relies on structure. Structure is stronger than judgment. Now let's talk about time. This rule doesn't shine in months. It shines in decades. At first, progress feels slow, almost invisible. And this is where most people abandon it. They mistake slowness for failure, but slowness is the point. Slow systems compound. Fast systems burn out. Now let's talk about compounding, not mathematically, but behaviorally. When you follow this rule, small wins accumulate. You build savings. You reduce stress. You gain confidence. You take better risks. You make calmer decisions. These changes stack, and over time, your financial life becomes easier, not harder. Now let's talk about why this rule protects you from major mistakes. Most financial disasters don't come from ignorance. They come from pressure. Pressure to keep up. Pressure to recover losses. Pressure to feel successful. Pressure to move faster. Margin reduces pressure. When pressure drops, reckless decisions disappear. This is why people with margin rarely panic sell, rarely overspend dramatically, rarely take desperate risks, not because they're smarter, because they're not cornered. Now let's talk about lifestyle inflation. This rule quietly limits it. If spending grows slower than income, wealth grows. If spending grows faster than income, stress grows. Most people don't fail because they earn too little. They fail because every increase in income is immediately absorbed by lifestyle. This rule blocks that automatically, not by restriction, by priority. Saving happens first. Spending adapts later. Now let's talk about identity. When someone follows this rule long enough, identity shifts. They stop seeing themselves as trying to get better with money. They start seeing themselves as stable. Stability changes behavior. Stable people don't chase hype. They don't panic during downturns. They don't need money to prove anything. Now let's talk about why people resist this rule emotionally. because it doesn't provide excitement. It doesn't provide stories. It doesn't provide bragging rights. No one applauds restraint. No one celebrates consistency. But wealth doesn't care about applause. It cares about math and time. Now let's talk about real outcomes. People who follow this rule don't always look impressive early. They drive older cars. They live below what they could afford. They don't upgrade as fast. But years later, they have options. Options to change jobs. Options to take breaks. Options to handle emergencies. Options to handle emergencies. Options to invest when others can't. That's the payoff, not luxury, control. Now let's talk about the final misconception. People think this rule limits life. It doesn't. It limits chaos. It limits regret. It limits stress. It limits dependency. And by limiting those, it expands freedom. Now here's the part most people miss. You don't need to follow this rule perfectly. You need to follow it predictably. Occasional mistakes don't matter. Inconsistency does. This rule forgives imperfection, but it punishes abandonment. Now let's close with the truth. If you strip away all the complexity, all the strategies, all the advice, this rule remains. Spend less than you earn, automatically, for a long time. Not because it's clever, but because it works when you're tired, when you're emotional, when life gets messy. And systems that work in those moments are the only ones that matter. In the next video, I'll explain why most people break this rule without realizing it, even when they think they're following it. And once you see how subtle that break is, you'll understand why so many smart people stay stuck. There's another reason this rule outperforms almost everything else. It removes negotiation. Most financial failure happens in negotiation moments. Just this once. I deserve this. I'll make it up later. This doesn't really count. Negotiation is exhausting. Every negotiation drains mental energy. Every exception weakens the rule. Every weakened rule increases future exceptions. Simple rules don't negotiate. They create a binary environment. Money is either spent or saved. Income either creates margin or it doesn't. No debate, no justification, no emotional storytelling. This is psychologically powerful because it removes ambiguity. Ambiguity invites rationalization. Rationalization invites drift. Drift is how financial plans die quietly. Now let's talk about drift. Drift doesn't feel like failure. It feels reasonable. A slightly nicer apartment, a few extra subscriptions, a little more convenience, a few more small upgrades. Each change feels harmless in isolation, but the rule catches drift early because the rule doesn't care about reasons. It cares about direction. Is spending growing faster than income, or is margin increasing? That's the only question that matters. Now let's talk about how this rule behaves during good times. When income rises, excitement rises. People feel successful, optimistic, confident. That's when financial damage often happens. People celebrate future income before it arrives. They pre-spend raises. They lock in higher fixed costs. This rule stops that, not by restriction, by sequence. Income rises first. Margin expands first. Lifestyle adjusts last, if at all. Sequence matters more than amount. Now let's talk about how this rule behaves during bad times. When income drops or uncertainty rises, fear appears. Fear causes overreaction. Overreaction causes damage. People panic. They liquidate. They abandon systems. But if margin already exists, fear loses leverage. The rule creates shock absorption. Shock absorption prevents emotional decisions. Now let's talk about time compression. People underestimate how fast time moves when systems are stable. Months blur, years pass quietly. If the rule is followed, progress accelerates without effort. People wake up one day and realize they're not stressed, they're not behind, they're not fragile. And this realization feels sudden. But it wasn't. It was built invisibly. Now let's talk about why people want exceptions. Because exceptions feel human. Rules feel cold, mechanical, unforgiving. But here's the paradox. Rules are forgiving. Negotiation is not. Rules forgive occasional mistakes. Negotiation invites repeated ones. The rule doesn't punish a bad month. It punishes abandoning the structure. Now let's talk about emotional maturity. Following this rule requires accepting something uncomfortable. That not every desire should be satisfied immediately. That not every increase in income requires a lifestyle change. That not every purchase needs justification. This acceptance is maturity, and maturity creates long-term outcomes. Now let's talk about how this rule scales. At low income levels, it builds survival. At middle income levels, it builds stability. At high income levels, it builds freedom. Same rule, different scale. That's power. Now let's talk about the final mental shift. Stop asking, how can I earn more to fix this? Start asking, how can I protect margin no matter what I earn? Income is volatile. Margin is controllable. Now let's close this layer with something important. This rule doesn't make you rich overnight. It makes you unbreakable over time. Unbreakable people don't panic. They don't chase. They don't implode. They wait. And waiting is where opportunity shows up. Because when others are pressured, optionality appears. And optionality is the real prize. Not wealth, not status. Options. The option to say no. The option to walk away. The option to slow down. The option to invest when others can't. All built from one boring rule. Spend less than you earn. Automatically. For a long time. Not because it's impressive, but because it quietly puts you in a position where impressive things become possible.